I'm an international communications consultant based in the UK, but I work globally, advising individuals, businesses, organisations and political campaigns in how to communicate effectively. What I want to do today is to help you to communicate effectively, to tell your story, to make sure that you know what your key messages are, that you're prepared for your interviews, that you know some tricks and techniques to make sure that while you're on camera, you're delivering your messages in an effective way. And then finally, some simple do's and don'ts for you to jot down to make sure that you see every interview as an opportunity to act as an ambassador for your cause. First, I want to talk to you about preparation. I can't stress enough how important it is to prepare properly. You want to be an ambassador for your cause, to communicate effectively about what's going on the ground, to the world, to the wider world. You can only do this if you prepare properly. To prepare properly, even the very best communicators in the world will always spend time to make sure they know what their messages are, they have facts and figures to hand, and even write down their answers to every possible question they might get asked in advance. Also, for preparation, you should be absolutely certain of what interview it is that you're going to be undertaking. Is it a live interview? Is it a pre-record? Are you going to be in a discussion with somebody else who perhaps may be painting themselves as some kind of expert? The key thing to know is what's the audience that you're talking to. That will allow you to talk in a way that fits them and will make sure that you're using the messages, telling your story in the right way. So in summary, the 3 points to remember on preparation are: 1, to write down the possible questions you might get asked. Number 2, write down the answers to these possible questions, to make sure you're not surprised, to make sure you have the right facts and figures to hand ahead of the interview, and to make sure that you always talk in 15 to 20 second sound bites to help the news organisations and also to help you to tell your story in the most impactful and compelling way. And thirdly, make sure that you know exactly what the interview is that you're about to agree to. Will it be a live? Will it be a pre-record? Who is it who will be talking to? What country are they from? And will you possibly be in discussion with somebody who may take a different view on the situation than that you're living? Remember, this is an opportunity to tell your story, so make sure you tell it well. So that's preparation. Now we're going to move on to the 3 techniques that you can use. There are some simple techniques, some tricks of the trade if you like, that will help you to be seen as a genuine ambassador for your cause, to help you to communicate effectively, to get your key messages across, and to deal with any question that you might get asked. These are flagging, hooking, and bridging. We'll take those in reverse order. So bridging is also called the satisfy and steer technique. This is a smooth transition from the question that you're asked to the answer that you want to provide. Very often a direct question deserves a direct answer, but sometimes that isn't enough, and you need to then steer it away, having satisfied the question, onto your key message, onto the facts, the figures, the story that you want to tell. Second, hooking. This is a more robust, less subtle way of taking the audience or the interviewer and steering them onto an area that you want to be talking about. It may be that you have an opportunity before the interview to quickly outline to the producer or maybe the interviewer themselves what you want to talk about that day. If so, then don't be afraid to say exactly what the new bit of information is that you want to communicate, what the facts and figures are, what the latest bit of information is that you want to tell the world. If that isn't possible, then you can do it during the interview. You can be quite robust to say, that's an interesting question, but actually what the important thing that the world needs to know is. As I said, it's less subtle, but very, very effectual. Finally, flagging. This can be done using verbal and non-verbal techniques. So verbal techniques, you may use a pause and then deliver something that's the most important thing you're going to be delivering that day. You can raise your eyebrows, you can change the way that you are delivering your words to make them more impactful. Just like I have there, I've slowed down. Hopefully this will draw attention to what you're saying. It also makes what you're delivering much more interesting. You don't come across as a robot just delivering your lines. Make use of your hands, use gestures where possible, and don't be afraid to state the obvious. So the best verbal technique is to say, the important thing for you to know today is, and then deliver your key message, deliver that new fact, that new figure. Tell the world your story. So now I want to talk to you about the simple do's and don'ts of delivering a compelling, impactful media interview. Do try to distill your messages down into 15 or 20-second sound bites. This may sound quite a cynical way of communicating to the outside world, but news organisations frequently cut down live interviews into later packages, so this will allow them to take your key message, the key point of your story, and put it into those packages to make sure that you're always communicating exactly what you want. Do think about the picture behind you. Now I'm talking today in an office in London with a white wall behind me. It doesn't communicate a great deal. You're obviously communicating a very serious story, and it's important, if possible, that you have a backdrop that helps to communicate your story and in an impactful way. Ask the interviewer, if possible, in advance what questions you're going to get, which will allow you to prepare your answers in advance. If that isn't possible, jot down your questions, write down the questions that you perhaps would find hardest to answer, and then write down the answers to those questions so that you are preparing the interview in advance to allow you to perform at your very best. Don't be afraid to redress misinformation. It may be that an interviewer who isn't on the ground doesn't have a full grasp of the situation. You do. That's why you're being interviewed. So don't be afraid to redress misinformation. Tell them the right facts, the right figures, tell them the actual story, because you are living that story, and that's why you're being interviewed. Although it's good to redress misinformation, try not to get angry with the interviewer. You should try to keep calm. That will allow you to communicate in an effective way. If you get angry, sometimes that gets in the way and you will forget what you're wanting to be talking about. By the same token, don't argue. It doesn't come across well. Don't ramble. We've already spoken about do talk in sound bites where possible. As soon as you start rambling, then you will lose sight of those sound bites. You will stop communicating your key messages, the key points of your story. Try to stay focused. Don't speculate. You're being interviewed because you're an expert. You're on the ground. You know what's happening. If you're asked about situations in other places or in things that you don't know what's happening, don't get involved in speculation. Use the satisfy and steer technique to bring it back to what you do know about. Keep focused. Don't use jargon. Keep what you want to say simple and to the point. That will help you to communicate very, very effectively.